Olympic City and the home of Pikes Peak. This is the Automotive ADHD Show with Matt West.
And here we are, rocking it on the Automotive ADHD Show. Matt West here, talking cars with you on the weekend. Really special show for you today. Chace Barber, founder of Edison Motors, joins me in the show to talk all about how Edison is truly the only truck manufacturer that believes in right to repair. They also have a unique take on EVs, at least in this market they do. And the way in the landscape that things are, the way they do things is a little different, and I think it's the way it should be. They also like to expose government corruption in their free time. This is really cool. I've talked at length about Edison Motors before on this show, so I'm really excited to bring you the founder, Chace, onto the show. It's going to be exciting. That's coming up here in a little bit. Now, before we get to that, I also talk a little bit about street racing. We're going to talk about the CrowdStrike IT debacle and how it affected an F1 team. And we're going to get to all of that and more on this edition of the show. Now, before we get to that, of course, I have to talk about this. This is amazing. You can buy a drag strip in Kansas right now for like remarkably cheap, for very little money. And this is one of those things that, I mean, this, you talk about late night Facebook Marketplace impulse buys. You find a car, you're laying in bed, browsing through Facebook Marketplace, maybe Craigslist too, and you find a car, you send an email, you send a message out and hope to pick it up the next day. This is that, except with a whole racetrack. And this racetrack, by the way, for a while sat at auction, and the bid only got up to, are you ready? $1,000. $1,000. And then somebody came along last minute yesterday and bid that up, threw another $500 at it, which extended the bidding period. It was about to close for $1,000, and then someone threw some money at it, and now the bid's going until the 24th of July, and so it got up to $1,500. And anyway, let me tell you a little bit about this racetrack here. Hat tip Nico DiMattia from The Drive, by the way, for this. And this racetrack is called Heartland Motorsports Park. It shut down in 2023 after about 35 years in operation, and apparently the issue was tax troubles. That's what ended up shutting the track down. And now it has, and it's a big section of land. There's 29 different lots on this plot of land being auctioned off. That being said, most of them are just grassland. They're not, racetrack, except for part of it. One part of it. Lot number 13 contains the racing surfaces, as they put it. That's the drag strip, by the way. And all of the adjacent buildings as well. And the crazy thing about this, I mean, look, we got to protect local racetracks. This is our duty as car enthusiasts. And even if you're not, if you're just tuning in on the radio today, you're like, who's this guy? What's he talking about? Why is he talking about cars? We'll get to all of that. You will learn. But I think local racetracks are incredibly important. And that ties into a story I'll talk about here in just a minute as well. By the way, though, lot 13 is, if you're wondering in size, 621 acres, 89,000 square feet of building space. Already has utilities, municipal water, it's got water, it has sanitization, it has electricity, all of that. It is a plug-and-play racetrack, okay? And it's not like there's huge amounts of renovation that are, necessary for this to operate, because it was just running last year. It's a good working racetrack. Low miles, no low ballers. I know what I have, right? And now, granted, they're not saying if there's a reserve on this, so that doesn't necessarily mean that it would sell for $1,500. And I can tell you, spoilers, it's not going to. And here's why. Because when I found this story yesterday, I was getting ready to prep for the show today. I found this story and I'm like, no way, a racetrack for $1,500, maybe with a reserve. We'll see. But Turns out I checked on it right before going on air here. And I blame Nico from the drive. I blame him for this, actually, because I checked this before I went on the air. The bid is up to $50,000 now, and it is Nico's fault. It is his fault. I've never met him. I've never met him in person. I know he works for the drive, and I know this is his fault. Because he wrote about this, here's what happened. People said, no way, a racetrack for $1,500. Let me go check it out. I'll throw a pot shot bid on there and see if I can get it for $2,000. 612 acres with a racetrack for $2,000. Right. Well, now it's bid up to $50,000 as of the show right here. If you're catching this on the podcast, which, by the way, lots of people do, that could be one of you. If you miss any minute of the show here on the radio, too, that's what the podcast is for. You can check that out. And wherever fine shows and mine are downloaded, YouTube, Spotify, iHeart, we're on Rumble as well, all of those cool places. But now, who knows what it'll be if you're listening to this later. But as of this, $50,000, which, you know what? Hear me out. $50,000, if the bid ended there, would still be an insane bargain for a facility that's no doubt worth deep into the millions. 612 acres. Yes, it's Kansas. You have to go to Kansas. I'm sorry. That's maybe the only drawback. Maybe that's why it's $50,000, but because there's nothing in Kansas except this racetrack. But that being said, even at $50,000, this would be a steal. I would sell every one of my cars right now. I would sell my house. I would sell everything just to float some extra cash to buy this. Even if this was $100,000, $200,000, $300,000, keeps going up. I think a facility like this. Now, granted, you have to look at this from a business perspective. Okay, I'm going to spend X amount of money on this racetrack. Can it return that much money? What's the racing industry like? The grassroots racing industry like? Is it sustainable? Yada, yada, yada. And running a track is really hard. You got to get people in the door. You got to make revenue. You got insurance to pay. You got all these different things. You've got upkeep on the track. Fiscally speaking, pretty much no racetrack is a sound financial decision. But that it doesn't matter. We can't look at this from a business perspective, because looking at this from a business perspective is why these tracks go out of business. That's why this happens. Yes, they're not profitable. A great number of these things are not profitable, and with the way the industry is trending, with the way that the general public looks at racing and looks at car culture, these are only going to get less profitable over time. But that doesn't mean that somebody shouldn't do it. Am I saying I should do it? I don't know, man. I don't want to lose any money, but maybe you do. No, I would do this. I would. If I could make this work, I think I would totally do it, because, you put a racetrack together. It's for a tremendous cause, in the sense that this is Americana. This is racing. Drag racing is in American culture. Cars are a part of American culture to an unbelievable level. It is, I think, a cultural monument in a sense. And there's people who wish it wasn't. And we, as enthusiasts, but even if you just drive a car to your 9-to-5 job and maybe take the kids to school too, I mean, this is something you've seen racing in movies. You've seen drag strips. Maybe when you were a kid, you went to a drag strip with your parents and watch the cars go down the track. And I think it's such an important part. It's a part of culture that we need to preserve. Good business decision or not. Hey, the cars that are racing on the track are a terrible financial decision on their own. I'm just saying, if you're into the project car realm, why not scale that up? Get a project racetrack. Oh man, I think this is really cool. I really hope that somebody buys this thing and does what they need with it. Now, coming up in the next segment, we're going to talk a little bit about street racing, why takeovers need to stop. I've mentioned that before on the show, but how that could maybe be solved with a racetrack like this. It would take some work. We're going to get to all of that, and we're going to talk to Chace Barber, founder of Edison Motors, here on Automotive ADHD after the break. You don't want to miss this.
And now for how things work with an engineer.
Transmissions. Shift.
And that was how things work with an engineer. More of how things work can be found at facebook.com/automotive ADHD.
man. Hey, those car sounds. Ethan Hunter, he did such a great job on the Pikes Peak International Hill Climb this year, and I love those car sounds. It's just a great sounding car ripping up that mountain, but I think it's giving people the wrong impression. I think it is, because I think people are getting the idea that, I got to be some hill climb driver to get on this show. No, you don't. No, you don't. Especially with car sounds. You absolutely do not have to be Ethan Hunter or Jimmy Ford to get on the show. Though they are. But you can send your car sounds. I want your car sounds on my show. And if you send some car sounds this month, I think here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go ahead and send anyone who sends me car sounds this month a As Heard on the Automotive ADHD Show sticker. You can see it here on the back of my laptop if you're watching on YouTube or Rumble. It's a little out of focus. There we go. As Heard on the Automotive ADHD Radio Show and Podcast sticker. So you can get that. There's also the Automotive ADHD embroidered key tag. This is a great way. I wish I had one handy at my desk here. But it's a great way to fish your keys out of your pocket. It's an awesome keychain, and it tells people that you have questionable tastes in radio shows and podcasts. By the way, the greasy fingerprints are not installed from the factory. You do have to put those on yourself. But that being said, you get that. Now, I will say, I will pick a winner out of all the car sounds I get. If you just send me car sounds, you're going to get the keychain and the sticker. But I'll pick one person to get the keychain, the sticker, and we'll bring this back, the $25 parts store gift certificate. That could be a set of windshield wipers, could be some oil for your car, it could be whatever you need. Every little bit helps, whether it's a daily driver or a project car. Now, I will say, for the international listeners on the show, the people who listen on the podcast around the world, I can do the keychain and the sticker pretty much anywhere. I haven't found somewhere where I can't mail those, but the gift cards do tend to be problematic in other countries. So I'm going to say the gift card, that's going to be a U.S. only thing. But as far as the keychain and the sticker go, I'll try to mail those to you wherever you are. I think we've had them as far out as Lithuania and Australia. We've mailed them out there before. There's a few places around the world. But anyway, Facebook.com. That's where you do that. If you're saying, where do I send those car sounds? You go Facebook.com/Automotive ADHD. And there's a pinned post at the top of the page, and you put a comment on that pinned post with a video of those car sounds. And I've had lawnmower sounds. I've had motorcycle sounds, tractor sounds. What I haven't had yet is somebody imitating themselves their own favorite car sounds. And that could be you. We'll play it on the radio for all of your friends to hear it. If I say it like that, no one's going to want to do it. But you know what? It'll be fun. Go ahead and do it. Facebook.com/Automotive ADHD. Now, I got to get to this. So CrowdStrike, and I wasn't going to talk about this because this happened just yesterday, Friday. CrowdStrike is a global IT company, and they handle a lot of the back end for Microsoft's update stuff. The stuff that goes in when your computer says, Windows needs an update. A lot of the back end of that is actually handled through CrowdStrike, which is kind of like a third party, essentially, that does that stuff. The irony, too, is they exist for the sake of preventing, like, data breaches and issues. And they themselves, yesterday, you might have heard about it, had an issue. And to distill it down into what it is and how it relates to cars, by the way, they had an issue where an update got pushed with some sort of bad file, and that bad file caused PCs, Windows machines, to not boot up, to blue screen of death, as it's called. And this caused tremendous issues in the airline industry, especially tons of delays in flights, things like that. But heck, airlines, hospitals have had issues. Even the broadcasting industry has had some challenges as a result of that. Now, another place that also had some issues as a result of that, and again, CrowdStrike isn't really a home, well-known name necessarily, a household name, but it is massive what they do. It is tremendously big, and ironically enough, Mercedes F1 team, they're sponsored by CrowdStrike. They are. It's right on the back of their jerseys. And they themselves had an issue. And a team spokesperson said this. Here we go. Quote, "We have been working through the morning with our partners to ensure no impact on track running. It has required some fixes to be applied, but that's all proceeding smoothly." By the way, the fix to this was essentially booting your computer in safe mode and changing a file. I won't get into the nitty-gritty of that. Also, I didn't have to do it. At least my computer sailed along just fine. And I'm on a Windows machine, and it did just fine. Though it did say this morning, "Your computer has updates. Would you like to install them now?" And I said, heck no. I'm not touching that with a 10-foot pole. It's not going to happen. But the F1 team, clearly they were affected by it. Because it required some fixes to be applied. Yes, that means it happened to them. And they were presumably applying those fixes, doing those IT workarounds while wearing their team jerseys with CrowdStrike proudly like second row on the jersey, like just like beneath the big, like, come on, man. Come on. You can't ask for more irony than that. You can't. So how this also ties into cars, not that many cars are running Microsoft Windows necessarily. But I talked a few weeks ago about interconnectedness with networked technologies in cars, cloud stuff. And I talked about how I don't think that's necessarily a good thing, especially as it creeps out of the realm of your infotainment system into other car controls, actually being able to start the car, drive it, steer with it, like all of this stuff can be controlled over the cloud now. And that's a problem. And people might say, yes, that's a problem from a private security sort of aspect, but from a practical aspect too. You might just say, what if there's a bad update that comes along and I can't drive my car? What if hackers get into it and make it so I can't drive my car? What if a bunch of hackers got into a system and made it so a lot of people couldn't drive their car? That'd cause some problems, wouldn't it? And so I think while the ClowdStrike issue didn't affect typically cars themselves, it affected people in the industry. It affected car dealerships too. It affected the car industry, sure, and an F1 team sponsored by ClowdStrike. It affected them as well. I wonder if they got like expedited troubleshooting from ClowdStrike. Like, I wonder if ClowdStrike sent them CrowdStrike. I was saying ClowdStrike. CrowdStrike. I wonder if they sent them a representative specifically to help them out. I don't know. I wonder. But look, it just, it has me leery of this stuff. People say, oh, it's a slippery slope fallacy. Nothing's going to happen. Well, something clearly happened here, and it was actually pretty darn relevant. It was a big deal. It was a very big deal. And you just open yourself up to more of that. So I like my older cars. I like the older stuff. You know what? When was the last time I turned my truck on and it had a software update? Never. In fact, it never has had that because it was a finished product out of the factory. Like, it was done when they shipped it out of the factory. Sure, you can have recalls. You can have things break. But generally speaking, it was kind of a done product. It wasn't like you get Tesla's great at this. Tesla's so good at this. You get car companies who they don't finish the product. They give you an incomplete product. They advertise features that you don't get and say, well, it's going to come in a software update later. No, I want a complete thing out the door now. That's just how it is. And we've gotten so used to this as a society, especially with computers and technology, of getting an incomplete product and then just waiting for updates. And that's like become the norm. In fact, like when you say, I want a complete product out the door, you are somehow now the weird one with unreasonable expectations. I don't think it needs to be that case. Yes, I understand cars are complex mechanically and they can have problems. Yes, you got service bulletins for things that maybe didn't work as they were expected. I understand that because that's part of the, engineering process, but deliberately withholding a feature that was advertised and just promising you'll get it at some arbitrary date down the road, and you may never get it. That to me rubs me the wrong way. That rubs me a little bit the wrong way. And I think that, at least for me, this is me being vocal about it. Yeah, I've got a microphone sitting here on the radio show talking about it right now. But maybe you should, if you agree with me on this, vote with your wallet a little bit too, and say, well, I kind of want a car that's a little different than what we have, and look for some options. There's not many, I'll tell you that right now. because no one's talking about it. But if enough people start getting on this and start saying, hey, there's a demand for cars that are simple, that are easy to fix, that are still reliable, and if anything, you add more tech stuff, you add more complication to it, you add more things that can go wrong. If there's a demand for, hey, we want something simple, bare bones, but it just works, it's got the creature comforts we want. Yes, it's got heated seats and AC, but it doesn't need software updates every week. It has all the features that were advertised out the door. And don't even get me started on paywalls behind features. BMW's fantastic at this, by the way. Oh, yeah, the car's equipped with heated seats. Can't use it, though, unless you pay us some extra and unlock it in software. So you're locking something in software behind, or you're locking something that physically is in the car behind software and saying I have to pay for it, even though I already paid for the physical thing. I know. It's a crazy world we live in. It is a crazy world we live in. And I think at some point, the industry, we gotta take another look. We got to step back and take a look at what we're doing and why we're doing it, and if it really makes sense. And this is becoming more and more prevalent as cars become more technologically complex, as more EVs come on the market with self-driving, things like that. And those EVs, by the way, are all built in a way where it's software updates this, and you've got all the functions integrated into a touchscreen. You've got, because it's self-driving, and the car can literally control the steering, the brakes, and the accelerator all at once. You also have issues where you can have kill switches easily implemented in the car via software. I've talked about those kill switches before. So by having all this interconnectedness, by having everything controlled by computers, you open up all of these possibilities that, look, I don't want, I guess I speak a lot for enthusiasts, but I think here I'm speaking for the average person driving their car. At the end of the day, I don't think this is stuff we want, and we're just complacent in allowing it to happen. I think that's something that needs to change. But you might say, who's the solution? None of the manufacturers are doing it. Literally none of them. There is one. There is one that is doing it, and they are, the founder of said company is willing to join me on the show. His name is Chace Barber, founder of Edison Motors, who believes in right to repair, believes in doing things in a way that's different than how all the other companies do it. He also likes to expose government corruption. All of that and more. He's coming up here after the break on Automotive ADHD. Don't go anywhere.